right, welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that takes a sometimes serious, oftentimes humorous look at the claim by Jehovah's Witnesses that they are living in a modern-day spiritual paradise. We're just here navigating it. I am your host, Stacy Bauman, former elder, ministerial servant, and most importantly, a kid raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses throughout the 1970s and 1980s. Again, welcome in. If you're new here, please stay. We try to make a safe environment, but I do want to give a little bit of a warning. We try to have some fun here. There's a lot of healing, sense of community. There's some laughs, there's some tears, but sarcasm, humor, observations, all of it are nothing more than this podcast host, and I own them. Never meant to offend, always meant to educate, maybe have a little bit of fun and some laughs. Guilty as charged. I want to tackle something today that I think is really important to life. I think many would agree that one of life's greatest joys is being in a loving relationship. It's not true of every single person, but I think it's safe to say it's true for most of us, the majority. And look, I'll get this out of the way right now. I'm a sucker for a good romance. We live in a world obsessed with the concept of romantic love, of companionship. Don't take away my man card, but I'm a sucker for a happy ending. Look, my generation grew up on the wonderful world of Disney on Sunday nights. I grew up on Disney. I still like a good Disney ending. And I'll admit it right here, some of my favorite, well, at least one of them, one of my favorite movies, it's a rom-com, is Serendipity. Just get it out of the way. I also loved The Notebook. And I feel like I'm secure enough in my manhood to share that with whoever might be listening. So sue me. I like a good, happy ending. And I think the importance of love and companionship is confirmed in the magic book known as the Bible, which, as we all know, was written under Jehovah God's direction, or so we are told. The Bible has a lot to say about romantic love, including the fact that monogamous companionship is the key and was the central idea to Jehovah's original purpose for mankind. These are all terms that are very familiar to a Jehovah's Witness. You might remember a perfect man and a perfect woman get together, get married, and they are supposed to fill the earth. They're supposed to get down to making babies. Lots and lots of people to fill this planet. In my opinion, it's safe to say that Jehovah might be the biggest romantic of all, which is truly a paradox, considering Jehovah also loves a good genocide. But nonetheless, based on the Bible itself and the teachings of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, committed relationships are very important. Again, they were the core belief of what God's original purpose was. And as you might imagine, there's some rules and stipulations that go along with that. You're not allowed to be romantic with anyone or to have companionship with anyone long term unless you put a ring on it. Marriage. If you're thinking about being intimate, you have to be married, according to Jehovah and his witnesses. It goes back to the beginning of time. He made it very clear. If you crack open the magic book known as the Bible at Genesis chapter 2 and verse 18, it says the following simply, quote, Jehovah God said, "It is not good for the man to continue to be alone. I'm going to make a helper for him." End quote. And so it begins. Love, companionship, committed relationships, marriage, romance, Jehovah God style. And listen, while we could probably do an entire show, set of observations, and lots of sarcasm on the Garden of Eden and Adam, I'll just say this. It's not like Adam had a choice. There wasn't really a wide variety of women or personalities, for that matter, for him to choose from. In fact, we might even say it was the first blind date on record. So God knocked Adam out and took his rib to make a woman because he didn't think it was a good idea for anyone to be alone. Interesting. Side note, side note to only me, I guess. He made Adam out of dust and thin air, but for Eve, well, the creator needed a rib. I always wondered as a kid, with Adam, it was from dust you are and to dust you will return. But with Eve, we don't get a scripture where it says from rib you are and to rib you will return. Look, I don't know. I don't know. And I tell you, going back to that first moment where Jehovah initiates companionship or marriage, love, romance, I often thought as a young guy, probably more in my teenage years, if I'm being honest, how gorgeous Eve must have been. The perfect woman, absolutely flawless, beautiful. I'm not even kidding when I say I worked it into talks, including public talks. The thought where I pictured and imagined the moment Adam, walking around in the nude by himself with a bunch of animals, laid eyes on Eve. Can you hear the music? Can you hear and feel his heartbeat pounding out of his chest? Not only her beauty and her form, which is unmistakable in females, but to actually have a companion, someone to spend forever with, someone to do all things paradise, Garden of Eden stuff with. Talk about smitten. Adam must have been bowled over. The book leaves out those details, but let's just say that I imagined it. But look, love and romance run a lot deeper than the obvious sweaty palms, beating hearts, or in us guys, let's just say other stuff popping up. Like only they can. Let's take a look at Jesus' chosen guys in upstate New York and what they tell us about romantic, committed relationships. I take you to the Watchtower, the study edition, August 2016, under the subheading, How Marriage Serves Jehovah's Purpose. There it is. Quote, Adam was delighted with his lovely wife. No word yet on if they interviewed Adam for that, making a supposition like I did. Back to the quote, whom he later named Eve. Side note, the first woman couldn't even choose her own name. I would like to say a precursor of things to come in most relationships. Back to the quote, being a complement of him, she would be a helper for him as they daily brought happiness to each other by fulfilling their roles as husband and wife. An important purpose of marriage was to populate the earth. Though they loved their parents, sons and daughters would leave them to get married and form new households. Humans would fill the earth to a comfortable degree and would extend their home until the entire globe was a paradise. End quote. Well, I'm tempted to take that one reference and dig deep on some of the absurdity in it. Let's just keep it high level. Love and marriage, Jehovah's Witness style. You'll note early on, and I have to pull it out of this, a woman isn't equal to a man. She is a complement to him. She is his helper. She makes him look good. You know, like a nice watch or a new pair of shoes. And there you have it. In the Garden of Eden, the origin of the term trophy wife. Boom. Courtesy of Jehovah's Holy Spirit. I don't know. Ladies, are you feeling warm and fuzzy inside in this whole first incident of romance? The idea of headship, ownership, and what I thought and still think is the beginning of men dominating women, and of course, seriously into abusive relationships in our times. And it all started in the Garden of Eden, but I digress. If you look deeper, you see that romantic love, marriage, and companionship is not about two different people who can't live without each other. It isn't about her big brown eyes or the way she smiles or how he holds her in his arms. No. It's all about Jehovah's purpose to fill a big, empty planet with billions of people that tell him, how amazing he is every minute of every day. Billions who are completely dependent on him. I know I do that with my kids. I make them tell me how amazing I am every day over and over again. Subject for another time. For a Jehovah's Witness, marriage is a lifelong bond. And it started all the way back in the garden, according to them. And it can only be broken by two things that allow for a person to remarry: cheating and adultery, or death. And while adultery is definitely a problem in Jehovah's Witnesses, we'll save that for a different day. Marriage is forever. Forever. And listen, isn't that the making of a good romance? You fall in love with someone and it is forever. And listen, there are those that are very happily married in Jehovah's Witnesses. Very happily married. People who've been together for many, many years. It tends to be older generations, but again, that's my perspective based on my age and my experience from where I'm at. But there's there's quite a few people who are happily married. They love each other. They enjoy each other. They get through the struggles. Think The Notebook, the movie, okay? There's also a sizable population of Jehovah's Witnesses that got married at 18 or so just so they could have sex, and they are now miserable. Miserable. Can't stand each other. And I got to tell you, I spent most of my years as an elder trying to keep those latter marriages together. But again, I digress. The vast majority of us would agree that love, romance, and companionship are necessary for a truly happy life. When you're talking about making a paradise earth where you will live forever in happiness, you move past details like your own mansion, your pet monkey, endless fruit baskets, to ask even more serious problems about marriage and companionship. I should say serious questions. Questions about love, marriage, and what Jesus is setting up for all of mankind in paradise. Buckle up if this is a new thought for you. When it comes to love and marriage, after the dust settles on the largest mass slaughter of non-Jehovah's Witnesses on the planet and paradise is ushered in, many have then questioned, and reasonably so, I might add, what then happens to relationships, marriage, single people, dating and courtship, and making babies on a paradise earth? What does the end of all wickedness and the limitations of the planet Earth and all things new mean for love, romance, and companionship? I'm going to give you a snapshot right now. I'm going to summarize what it means according to the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses going back several decades, okay? And then we will unpack and take a look at some of their comments because, gosh, they're really warm and fuzzy guys when it comes to love and companionship. Let me tackle this first, and I want to say right now, as I will emphasize multiple times, this is highly controversial to many Jehovah's Witnesses, particularly older generations. First, if my spouse and I survive Armageddon, will we still be married in paradise? Answer according to the governing body: yes. You have to love the odds, right? Both of you survive, you get to stay married. And let me tell you, for some folks, that was a death sentence. They were miserable because they hate their marriage mate. But again, I digress. Second, if I'm single, when Jesus and Stephen Lett rain fireballs down on humanity, will I get to find someone special in paradise? For example, can I marry King David or Solomon? Can I date Esther or Rahab? They're all really good looking in the Bible Stories book and Watchtower articles. In fact, they're beautiful. But the answer is no. I mean, yes. I mean, currently, not sure. Uh-oh. Current status, of single people, according to the governing body. And finally, one that truly devastates people. Will resurrected people, single or married at death, be allowed to marry in paradise or reunite with the love of their life? And how about the surviving spouse who can't wait to see the love of their life resurrected? Answer, according to the governing body, no. No. Jehovah's Witnesses have been taught that resurrected people will not be able to marry in the paradise earth and will spend all of eternity alone, watching animals procreate, steering clear of bad habits like masturbation or a good cuddle session. All of it is off the table for a single or married person that dies and is resurrected in paradise. What? Like I said, buckle up. So who's ready to take a deeper look at one of the most talked about, controversial topics in the history of Jehovah's Witnesses? And I don't think I'm exaggerating. This was a sure showstopper in a Saturday morning car group. This one goes right to the heart, as people in love or hoping to find love or hoping to have babies in a paradise earth are hit in the face with one of the most brutal teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses, that their eternal future may include them living alone on a paradise earth forever, without companionship and without children. And the best part about this, Jesus once again changes his mind a lot on this subject. I know it's a theme on this show, and especially true when you insert the words governing body. And there are some bombshells, some true emotional bombshells. So here we go. Now, I answered those three main relationship, marriage, singlehood questions bluntly, but where the hell does that even come from? Why have they at times been resolute, as we will see, and other times waffled on this subject? As always, a reminder that the Jesus Christ, not of the Bible, but the Jesus Christ of Jehovah's Witnesses, is a really moody guy. His moods, decisions, and life-altering comments change like the seasons. So try to keep up, okay? Here we go. It starts with reading comprehension issues and taking Jesus' words out of context, because you invented a paradise earth fantasy in 1935 when you realized that the heavenly hope that you said only 144,000 people get to take advantage of isn't going to go too far with billions of people. Let's look at the magic book. At Luke chapter 20, verses 34 through 36, Jesus himself says the following, quote, "The children of this system of things marry and are given in marriage, but those who have been counted worthy of gaining that system of things and the resurrection from the dead neither marry nor are given in marriage. In fact, neither can they die anymore, for they are like the angels, and they are God's children by being children of the resurrection." End quote. Side note, remember, angels are genderless. None of them fun moving parts that us men and women have. Okay. This is where the pain and the debate begins among Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm telling you, the car service groups that I was in that had people crying, that had people debating, were unbelievable. And it's not hard to see why this debate begins here. But it's also not hard to consider what Jesus said in context. Let me summarize this story in Luke 20. When answering this all-important question, Jesus is confronted by the Sadducees, who, unlike their pals, the Pharisees, don't believe in the resurrection or angels and stuff. So they're trying to trap Jesus with a question about 7 brothers, 1 woman. The brothers die. They all take turns marrying her. They all die. And somehow, with 7 guys and 7 different marriages, she doesn't have any kids. So their question was, who is her husband when she's resurrected? Which of the 7 guys? They don't believe in resurrection, so they're trying to fool Jesus. Jesus answers the above that we just read, and you'll note there's no mention by Jesus of a paradise earth. Jesus kept a secret from billions of people throughout time until whispering it into the ear of Judge Joseph Rutherford in Washington, D.C. in 1935. He left out that detail. And third, and now the obvious, Jesus is talking about a heavenly resurrection. Heaven, where genderless spirit creatures who don't bump uglies, they don't cuddle or anything else, all live together doing what after Armageddon? I don't really know. But the key here is he's talking to a group of people that don't believe in resurrection, and he's talking about heaven, not a paradise earth. And folks, the problems begin. So to summarize, Jehovah's Witnesses have been told a verse about heavenly resurrection also somehow applies to a paradise earthly resurrection. And well, it doesn't fit at all. And the speculation fires. I know you will be shocked to hear that even Jesus, the guy that said these words, isn't really sure how he feels about this. So let's go back to the beginning. Will resurrected people on earth be allowed to marry? What about single people resurrected or successful at dodging death balls from Garrett Loesch and Sam Hurd and the Apostle Peter? Will they be able to get married once they're resurrected in paradise? Again, all based on a verse about heaven. But they make every effort to comment on it. In the Watchtower of 1950, one of the earlier comments on this, October 15th, page 381, we get this from Jesus' favorite guys, quote, "Nor will the resurrected multitudes be privileged to do so, for Jesus plainly stated that such will not marry, nor be given in marriage." End quote. A Jehovah's Witness hearing this in the 1950s, faced the reality that their current marriage, the one they were in while they were reading this lovely article, was likely temporary. And if they outlived their spouse, they better hurry up and marry someone before Armageddon hits, or they too get to risk being alone on a paradise earth forever. I wasn't there, but I was in later decades, and I can tell you that this line of thinking caused great distress in people. Pain, worry, sleepless nights. And at least in my experience, it was especially true in sisters, some of which may have had children and wondered what all of this crap meant in paradise. Were they going to be single moms forever? Watch their kids grow up, be alone? Kids without fathers? What did it mean? Nope. Your family will never be reunited. That point is made clear by the governing body. Nothing to worry about here, sister. Have a banana and a pet elephant. That is exactly what the governing body was teaching to people. And again, I wasn't there, but the stress was real in the 1950s because just 2 years after saying resurrected people were doomed to being single and alone, and that married couples where one died before Armageddon could never reunite, they let this one slip into print. From the Watchtower of 1952, August 1st, page 478, under one of my favorite all-time set of articles known as Question from the Readers. I think they've mysteriously disappeared. I wonder why. We get this, quote, "When the mandate to fill the earth is fulfilled, when childbearing ceases, the marriage partners may continue their association together as life companions, or they may not, depending upon the divine will at that future distant time. We cannot say at this time what divine providence will arrange in the distant future in the new world. End quote. And so, Jesus begins his back and forth comments on something he never commented on to begin with. Resurrection, marriage, love, and romance in a paradise earth. But I love that reference. For those paying attention to what I just read, they really expose themselves here. 1. Companionship on a filled earth may not be the divine will in the future? Wait a minute. I'm pretty sure we just learned from the Watchtower in the Bible that Jehovah's entire original purpose was to have men and women fill the earth with people that adored him all day, every day. Did he forget about that original purpose? Second, why would childbearing cease? If you listened to last week's episode in the book Worldwide Security Under the Prince of Peace from 1986, we are told we may be going to other planets to deal with population issues on the Earth. Last check, the universe is limitless, so people, go be rabbits. Let's get this party fired up. Third, you just said in this quote, we cannot say, but well, you did. Just 24 months earlier, as I shared moments ago, no marriage in paradise. Within months, contradicting themselves. But back to the subject. To summarize, married people who survive fireballs will stay together. Or maybe not. Single people at Armageddon may or may not be single for life. What? Never have children or have companionship. Resurrected people after Armageddon stay single, live alone, and they also never have children. But this answer apparently didn't sit too well with Jehovah's Witnesses, and I believe it's during this particular time period that this Jehovah's Witness urban myth conversation and distressing debate on marriage, resurrection, being alone, no babies, all of this in a paradise earth, this is where it all started. Just a few months later, after the comments I just read you in 1952, Jesus and his guys at Bethel switch gears again and say this from the Watchtower of 1954, September 15th, page 575, under one of my favorites, Questions from the Readers. And do you note that? Questions from the Readers. They go on some really bizarre rant about when someone died and the timing of the 1,000-year reign, a final test, and what happens to single or married people if they happen to still be alive. I won't go through that in the interest of time, but that is the belief of Jehovah's Witnesses, timetables-wise. It says this in this article months later, quote, after that final test, there will definitely be no marrying or being given in marriage then by those counted worthy of the new world and having the right to eternal life, just as angels have that right. Wait, why are the angels involved? Quote, but even before the gaining of the everlasting new system of things, these ones brought back in the resurrection of mankind do not marry, because even prior to the final test, they are children of the resurrection. By the time they return from the dead, apparently they have a timeline that they haven't shared. Quote, through a resurrection paradise will have overspread the earth, and the, quote, token fulfillment of the procreation mandate will have been effected by the Armageddon survivors and their offspring. In other words, folks, bad timing. You'll miss out on companionship, marriage, and baby making, I should say. Baking, bun in the oven. Because they got that covered while they were still dead. The group that survived Armageddon got too busy making babies and having love and romance. You're out of luck. Bad timing. Back to the quote. It is even reasonable and allowable to entertain the comforting thought that those of the other sheep who now die faithful will have an earthly, must nail this, will have an early resurrection and live during the time when the procreation mandate is being fulfilled and when paradise conditions are being spread earthwide, and that they will share in this divinely given service. End quote. In one of my favorite, most bizarre quotes on such a serious subject, it's all about timing. There's something called a procreation mandate. We don't know what that involves, where they got it from. Is it in the Bible? Did Jesus institute this? And by the way, being able to procreate is just service. It's just a service. No one enjoys it. We're just making babies, filling the earth. Then we resurrect you, faithful people, early. But sorry, tough break. You missed out on the procreation mandate. You don't get to marry or have babies. We took care of that while you were dead and in the ground. What? Can you imagine? Completely fabricated. And if it's confusing, it's because it is. In the words of Nietzsche, quote, they muddy the waters to make it seem deep, end quote. It is all up in the air and depends if you get resurrected during the 1,000 years when they're burying billions of corpses, or if you're resurrected after the final test with Satan. Jehovah is just reading hearts, but he needs to be sure you won't follow Satan again in one of the weirdest teachings of all time. But at this point, you get to live alone throughout all of eternity. You weren't part of that earlier group before the early resurrection. Tough break. Enjoy your solitude. There are many, many more references throughout the decades, but I'm just going to feature a few that I found interesting when I was researching this subject as an elder, and even after I left Jehovah's Witnesses 14 years ago. The amount of brutal conversations and people that were afraid and emotional and upset over this teaching, I can't even begin to tell you, by far and away one of the most controversial set of conversations I've ever had. And again, all based on a verse where Jesus is trying to answer guys that don't believe in resurrection about heaven. The governing body goes out of its way to come up with something called a procreation mandate, where apparently Jehovah says, you will get busy making babies right now. Oh, you missed that group. You never get to make one. But Jesus keeps changing his mind. Let's move forward to the 1960s, where all that free love and hippies apparently influenced Jesus and his faithful and discreet slave on earth, because they go on to say this in the Watchtower of 1960, November 1st, page 657, under the very aptly titled article, Marriage in Paradise. It says this, quote, faithful surviving couples will continue their married life after Armageddon directly into the restored paradise. Single survivors will enjoy the privilege of entering into married life with theocratic partners. We got rid of the sluts and the jerks. And will have the happiness of raising children under paradise conditions. End quote. Are you getting dizzy? Wait a minute. What? Oh, yeah. If you were single and survived dodging fireballs and jumping over earthquakes, then you could think about getting married after Armageddon. If you died before Armageddon, you were out of luck. Your future on earth in paradise was as a single, celibate person. No matter if you were a virgin when you died or not, you never got to experience romance, marriage, and, making love. You're out of luck. I often thought about single people that were Jehovah's Witnesses. Was their last thought being, I'm dying a virgin and I'll forever be a virgin when I wake up? It's unbelievable. And I'm not kidding. This subject was discussed in field service car groups. Genuinely, and I mean genuinely, concerned young people worried about dying in an accident or something, being a virgin forever. In this system of things, in the next, and if they died. The look of panic on their face during this convo in a car group was something to behold. And I make jokes, but it was actually really painful and brutal. That same article in 1960 continues with some details, quote, although children then born from still imperfect Armageddon survivors will not be born perfect. What? I mean, we're going straight science fiction here. Back to the quote, there will be no stillbirths or miscarriages or deformed children. Well, thank God. They will be born in righteousness by righteous parents in God's righteous new order. And there will then be no need for artificial birth control, end quote. Well, you don't say, considering single people can't even think about it if they're resurrected. Who needs birth control? And that this is in there should really raise a red flag. It's because people were upset about it. Wait, this will be during the 1,000 years of growing to perfection. So depending on when you date, when you marry, and do the deed, your kids are likely to be okay, but you guys are still not quite perfect. That takes 1,000 years, and you won't need birth control because no one's going to be allowed to do it anyway. My young mind would then think, wow, get married, have a baby in paradise, then the baby and the parents get to face Satan again after the 1,000 years, again raising more questions as to why? Why exactly? But while each of these little references could be their own subject for conversation, I have even bigger questions after reading just 2 or 3 from the 50s and 60s. Questions that haunted me both as a kid and as an adult when I learned about all of this. Questions like, who wants to tell guys like King David and his son Solomon, who collected female companionship like baseball cards in the thousands, who wants to tell them they're out of luck? Who, despite having lots of beautiful wives and concubines, lost his mind while watching his friend's wife take a bath, had everyone killed, stole the woman, and a baby died. Who's going to tell him, hey, welcome to paradise, you get to live alone, looking at perfect, beautiful women walking around in paradise. But you can't touch. Look, but don't touch. Yeah. Who is the guy that gets to sit David down and point to infinity and say, your bed's going to be empty, buddy? And I also wondered, and I'm guessing this would also be the perfect time to show David the governing body's teaching on masturbation, right? Anyone who wants to line up to tell David, welcome to paradise, David. You get to live alone forever. He could barely handle it one night. Imagine the excitement of Jephthah's daughter, who they claim went up to a celibate life for service at the temple. That guess what? Welcome to paradise, Jephthah's daughter. Thanks for your sacrifice here in the Bible. You now get to be celibate here in paradise forever too. I wonder how Joseph, Jesus' stepdad, feels about all of this. He gets to be the other guy. Mary and Jesus go to heaven, and Joseph gets resurrected to earth where he lives alone throughout all of eternity. Talk about drawing the short straw. I could keep going on my questions on this, but I won't. But one more to land the point home. In the Watchtower of 1961, November 15th, page 704, you guessed it, questions from the readers. For dead ones, it says, for dead ones with spiritual heavenly hopes and for dead ones with earthly paradisaic hopes, the rule enunciated by Jesus Christ stands unaltered. Quote, in the resurrection, neither do men marry, nor are women given in marriage. End quote. So for all you faithful people of old getting resurrected to paradise, monkeys and fruit baskets, tough break, fellas, and also you ladies. You were men and women of faith who conquered empires. Some of you slayed giants and built arks. Some of you saved all of mankind. Looking at you, Esther. But well, now you get to live alone forever on a paradise earth. Let that sink in. For a thinking Jehovah's Witness, they looked at this in awe and devastation. Forget David, forget Noah, forget all those names. This nonsense actually affects married Jehovah's Witnesses today. Today, who dig into the library of spiritual food given to them by the quote-unquote governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they find stuff like this. From the Watchtower of 1962, June 1st, page 328, under the article, Will the Dead Live Again? Married people who lost a mate learn this. Quote, that happiness will not be diminished because the Heavenly Father does not reunite in marriage resurrected persons who were once man and wife. Their joy will overflow to be able to enjoy each other's fellowship as heirs of life. End quote. That's right. You were the love of my life. All of our children are here in paradise with us. We used to make love and share our deepest thoughts together. But, well, the governing body just said, I should just be grateful you're resurrected like me, and we get to be pals. We get to be friend-zoned for all time here on a paradise earth. Look, I'm making jokes about this, but here's the truth. Here's the truth. I saw people bawling about this. I saw people devastated by this. Married people who truly loved each other were terrified. One of them would die before Armageddon, and it meant that they could never be together again, even if they both made it in the paradise lottery. Imagine how those prayers to Jehovah went. And let me just say this. How many questions does this raise in your mind about the children of formerly married Jehovah's Witnesses when one or both of their parents are resurrected into paradise? The kids, adult kids in paradise, they get to watch mom and dad live separately and alone forever. Because why again? And I don't know about you, but when you love someone and you're really into each other, you kind of want them. Especially if you've been intimate before and haven't seen each other in a long time. What's the plan for perfect, young, gorgeous singles in paradise? What's the plan, Jehovah and Jesus and governing body? Is the plan celibacy forever? Because I heard you mentioning angels. We know they don't have the plumbing or the parts. This whole teaching just reminds me of a perfect reality show for Netflix. I'm sorry, this is what comes to mind. You know, like Love Island or Love is Blind. I mean, we could have a reality show in paradise called Resurrection Island, where formerly married people looking better than they ever have get to hang out together as pals, but forget their marriage, their feelings, and those times they got wild and made babies. Episode after episode of these resurrected people sitting around talking about fruit basket, their pet chimpanzee, and of course, Jehovah. We're going to talk a lot about Jehovah, I guess. And you can see where people are eliminated on Resurrection Island in real time if they ever think about touching each other. You know, from the host in heaven. He's watching on. If you even think about it, you've been resurrected as a person of faith, but you can't be together. You're snuffed out if you even think about touching your former wife of 40 years. I'm sorry. This teaching just lends itself to the world's worst reality show. And we're supposed to believe, and a Jehovah's Witness is supposed to believe, that this is loving. This is what Jehovah wants. In the Watchtower of 1967, October 15th, page 638, there it is again, question from the readers. Are you noticing a trend? Are you noticing how many Jehovah's Witnesses, upon learning this teaching, wrote into the society asking for some answers? The trend is real. It says this, quote, "It is understandable that Christians might be concerned about marriage prospects in the resurrection, since the strongest human emotional ties are often with regard to one's mate. Many faithful servants of God who look forward to living forever on earth and whose mates have died would like to have support for their hope that they could be reunited as a husband and a wife in the resurrection. While not being callous to their sincere feelings, we must admit that apparently Jesus' words apply to the earthly resurrection, and they indicate that those resurrected will not marry or be reunited in a marriage relationship with former mates." End quote. Hearts were broken. And might I add, thanks for mentioning you don't want to be callous to our feelings. I'm feeling better already. But the answer is no. So if you're picturing a reunion in paradise between a man and a woman, along with your possible children who have all made it there too, one big happy family, well, forget about it. You'll go do dinner at mom's, you might do breakfast with dad, and we cannot remotely explain why. The irony is that they had to know how much this would upset people. They had to know. And they apparently have reading comprehension issues because they all get it from Luke 20, where Jesus is talking about heaven. But somehow they apply it to earth. And gosh, folks, you have to when you make up a story about a paradise earth in 1935, and most people are headed there. They attempt to explain this teaching, never taught by Jesus or the Bible, in a little book, you might remember it, known as it's entitled actually, "Is This Life All There Is?" It was published in 1974, but on pages 178 and 180, under the subheading, "From Whom Resurrection Will Bring Benefits?" It's a question. We get this, quote, "On the basis of Jesus' answer to the Sadducees, some may be disturbed about his saying that there will be no marrying among those raised from the dead. They may even think that without marriage, resurrection is something undesirable, that it would not benefit them. However, when reasoning on Jesus' reply, we do well to remember that we are imperfect. Our likes and dislikes are largely conditioned by the things to which we have become accustomed. So no one really has any basis for being sure that he would not like the future provisions that God will make for the resurrected ones. Then, too, not all the details have been provided. This has really been a kindness on God's part. Why, as imperfect humans, we might at first react unfavorably to things that would actually fill our life with joy in a perfect state. Such details, therefore, might be beyond our present ability to receive. We have comprehension issues. It's a dig. Back to the quote, "But what about those who are brought back from the dead to live on earth? Will they be reunited with former marriage mates? No statement in the Bible indicates that this will be the case. Hence, if a person chooses to remarry now, he does not have to worry about the effect this might have on a resurrected mate in the future. If singleness is not for him, he does not have to struggle to maintain it in the hope of being reunited in marriage with his former mate in the resurrection." End quote. And let the hell begin, especially for sisters, at least in my experience. So, if you're following their line of reasoning in that reference from the "Is This Life All There Is" book in 1974, no one's getting reunited. No one's going to remarry. And look, don't hold out hope for that. If your mate dies, marry someone fast. You can imagine the impact the emotions this had on certain people. And I'm not kidding when I tell you, I can think of 3 right off the top of my head of conversations where marriage mates went home and got into it because they're talking about, the old classic relationship conversation between a man and a woman. If I die, would you remarry? And I can't even begin to tell you the rabbit hole this opened in the earth for married people. And in my case, again, particularly sisters who were wondering if their men couldn't control themselves to wait for them in resurrection. Now they're being told the man shouldn't wait at all because he ain't going to get back together with you, so he might as well find a new sister. And the same is true of sisters in reverse with guys. But I saw the emotions in the sisters more. That's the truth. Kind of says a lot about us guys. Yeah, kind of yucky when I think about it. But it's a masterclass in gaslighting millions of people. You'll note in that reference that your disappointment or terror on this teaching really doesn't matter. You just don't understand what it means to be perfect. What it means to be a perfect human with a perfect mind and body in paradise. So don't even think about this. You don't know what it means to be perfect, which is a catch-all for anything Jehovah's Witness they don't understand. And look, the counsel there was remarry now if you're lonely. That thinking was real. I know of a couple, and I will never reveal names, where the dying sister passed off her husband to a single sister who was already developing inappropriate feelings for him. On her deathbed, she blessed them getting together. Not kidding. The dying sister knew her time was up, and she wasn't going to get him back anyway, according to this teaching. That was it. Game over for our relationship. Now I ask you, in terms of love, romance, and all things fuzzy and Disney, how awful is all of this? It doesn't exactly make you weak in the knees, does it? But some who actually read and studied the Bible among Jehovah's Witnesses, and I want to just state that's very rare, but those that did saw through all of this, and after reading Jesus' words at Luke 20, concluded that Jesus was speaking to people that were going to heaven. And this was about heaven. But wait for it. The governing body was quick to clear that up too. In the Watchtower of 1987, and might I add, before I move on here, it's interesting on this subject of perfection, and that you just don't understand you're not perfect. It's a catch-all for Jehovah's Witness. It's everything. Anyway, back to Watchtower 1987, June 1st, page 31, we get this, quote, "Some have felt that Jesus was referring to the heavenly resurrection. Yet there are reasons to believe that his reply was about the earthly resurrection in the coming system of things. What reasons underlie this view? Those questioning Jesus did not believe in him or know about a heavenly resurrection. They asked about a Jewish family under the law. In reply, Jesus referred to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, men who hope for life again on earth." End quote. When you're reaching, why not go all the way? An unbelievable comment. There's the lie. There's the lie by the governing body. Jesus never, at any point in his visit here, taught about a paradise earth. He only ever spoke about one hope, heaven, that anyone listening was hearing about for the first time. And Jesus never said anything about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob living on earth. He actually said the exact opposite, heaven. But millions read that paragraph in a Watchtower and walked away an emotional train wreck. But they doubled down with the gaslighting. Back to the reference, quote, "Similarly, we have never lived as perfect humans." Oh, there it is. "Thus, we cannot be sure how we will feel about past relationships if and when we gain a perfect human life in a paradise. It is good for us to remember that when Jesus made that statement, he was a perfect human and therefore in a better position than we to appreciate the feelings." End quote. That's right. Celibate Jesus who never married or made babies, he's got more insight than you and me. The irony is insane. But they go on to tell us right there, believe us, you just don't know what it means to be perfect. Their favorite catch-all basket. Anyone resurrected remains single, childless, and they're gonna love it. Just believe us. They're going to love being alone for all of eternity. Maybe they never experience making love or what it's like to be in someone's arms or to have someone look into your eyes. Doesn't matter. They're going to love it. If you're thinking what I've been thinking, and I've been thinking it for decades, something like this, quote, well, once someone is resurrected and face eternity alone, and it's just because we peons don't understand what it's like to be perfect, well, then I have a question, governing body. Why then did Jehovah see the perfect man, Adam, alone in a paradise for all eternity and decide it was a really bad idea, and then he made him a woman, a companion? He was perfect. He seemed to understand. You're perfect. You seem to understand. Does Jehovah suddenly not understand what it's like to be perfect either? The all-wise governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses, ladies and gentlemen. A bunch of guys in upstate New York who can't find their ass. They literally write this stuff without putting one moment's thought to it. This all sounds terrible right now, that you won't get your marriage mate back or that single people will never marry and live a life alone forever because you're just not perfect. Well, Jehovah was perfect. Adam and Eve were perfect. They were in a paradise. He thought it was a really bad idea to be alone. Oh, man. But wait, people, wait. I am receiving new light on this subject, even at the time of this recording. Are you ready? Comfort for any former or current Jehovah's Witness that might be listening. Just 9 years ago, Jesus, long silent on the matter of the core belief about Jehovah's original purpose and the importance of companionship, has said something new. From the Watchtower of 2014, August 15th, pages 29 through 30, Jesus said this through the governing body, quote, is there sound reason for hoping that resurrected ones will be able to marry? Put simply, the answer is that we cannot say. For years, our publications have said that Jesus' words about the resurrection and getting married likely refer to the earthly resurrection, and that those resurrected to life in the new world will evidently, one of their best words, not marry. It is possible that Jesus' words about marrying and the resurrection apply to the heavenly resurrection, end quote. In 2014, after decades of crushing the souls of married people, single people, people dying and on their last breath, in 2014, Jesus comes clean. But wait a minute, how can that be Jesus? Because you say that he gives you everything, but you say you cannot say, is your cell phone with Jesus breaking up? Why hasn't he just cleared this up with this new light and said, no, I was talking about heaven. It was pretty obvious to everyone else. They cannot say. They're kind of riding the fence. Does Jesus ride the fence on issues? Unbelievable proof that the governing body is full of shit. Right there. Watchtower of 2014, August 15th, pages 29 through 30. So if you're putting your trust in them and things like marriage, love, and maybe your life in things with blood and other matters, you might want to think again. Jesus is moody, and they can't even really say what decision he landed on. But in seeing his Bible study and baptism numbers dwindle, Jesus apparently made a business decision and decided to answer his guys in New York. Oh, wait, he didn't really answer them at all. He apparently said, hey guys, make it ambiguous instead of just answering them. And so, folks, here we are. It's a very strong maybe. Maybe. Maybe resurrected people don't have to live forever celibate. Maybe. So a few random observations on all of this. The weird questions, as always. The brain benders from the host. Excuse me. Imagine being a virgin with this as your future hope. Do you make some different decisions while you're alive? I'm guessing you do. I won't go into detail. Imagine being an older person facing death in this system of things, wondering if you'll be resurrected to be another alone single person forever in paradise. Wow. Wow. At least you'll be perfect, you'll be good looking, and people will look at you, but you got to be alone. How about imagine how this crap impacts losing a spouse today and the painful visions some have had, and I'm not kidding, of seeing the love of their life every single day in paradise, but you can't be with them. You just look at each other. You might live on the same paradise street. You might eat at the same picnic table in paradise gatherings, but you can't be with them. And how does all of this affect the idea of having babies and making a family? You want what I consider one of the most awful lies and brain benders ever in the history of Jehovah's Witnesses? Are you ready? Here it is. This organization has long taught that Jehovah's Witnesses should consider not having babies and waiting until the new system of things to procreate. But if you die today, they also teach you likely won't marry or have babies. What? Wait, what? Don't have babies, serve us, drive around in a minivan handing out our literature. You can have babies in the new system. Oops, you died. Oops, you're resurrected. You're never having babies. Folks, I'm sorry. I landed on this as a teenager and went, what the hell? Do they even understand what they're telling people? Are they overtly lying to see the reaction of others? There it is. There it is. Wait to have babies. Oops, you're dead. You won't ever get to have them anyway. I know of people right now that are still married, still alive, that held off having babies. And let's just call it what it is. They're playing Russian roulette with procreation. Must not have been part of the procreation mandate they mentioned mysteriously. There's no guarantee they're ever going to get a chance. Wow. And a brain bender that has sat with me almost all of my teenage adult life. Like, wait a minute. And thus you see the depth and evil of this teaching. A teaching that isn't even there. They just made it up. And finally, how about those Jehovah's Witness sisters who couldn't find a nice brother to marry in this wicked system of things? Couldn't find a man at the district convention or at their local congregation because, listen, in Jehovah's Witnesses, women outnumber the men 2-1, and that's probably generous. There's many more women. Well, ladies, here's some encouragement for you. From the Watchtower of 1956, October 1st, pages 603 to 605, Jesus wanted you to know this, quote, after Armageddon, the couple surviving will continue in their marital union. Others surviving in a different state, widowers, widows, virgin men, and virgin women will be privileged to marry. Oh, they're part of that early resurrection or that non-early resurrection group. It's so confusing. But note this, quote, whether there will be an imbalance between the available men and the available women surviving need not worry us now. Marriage then will be regulated by the everlasting Father, whom Jehovah God uses to fight the battle of Armageddon and to bruise the great serpent, the wicked marriage disturber, in the head. End quote. Oh boy. Ladies among Jehovah's Witnesses, you're right back to where you started. In this whole matter of marriage, love, romance, companionship on a paradise earth, there just might not be enough guys to marry, or maybe there will be. We just can't tell you right now. But won't it be fun for you to walk around as a gorgeous, perfect single woman and just walk among the billions of resurrected men that are, off limits? The resurrected men that they can't guarantee will be there, that you can walk amongst, that also have to stay single because you're all resurrected, so you can just look at each other, look but don't touch. The absurdity of one of the stupidest and cruelest things the governing body has ever pushed on people is this. And for the sisters, and every congregation you go to, they're sitting in the back row. There's a group of 3 or 4. They're sweethearts. They're amazing. Some of my favorite people. But they haven't found a man to marry. They're alone. Some are elderly. Some have lost mates. Guess what? Never get to see those guys again. Not romantically. And then some of them are just younger sisters staying with the older sisters. Yeah. If something happens to you, you get to just walk around among billions of perfect men looking at you, the perfect woman. But you just get to look at each other. Welcome to the teaching of the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses on all things romance on a perfect paradise earth. It's insane. And listen, if you want to see if they still believe all of this crazy teaching, I ask you to take a look at the illustrations on resurrection in the Watchtower magazine or any of their other publications. Do you notice anything? Do you notice anything? How often do you see an adult man or woman of the same age running to greet one another at resurrection? How often do you see 2 lovers embracing in paradise? Let me help you out. You won't. Their illustrations of the resurrection in paradise show parents with resurrected children, grandparents being embraced. You let me know when you find one illustration of 2 lovers running to greet each other upon resurrection in a paradise earth. You're not going to find it. And if you do, I'd love to see it. But like everything in Jehovah's Witnesses, including love and companionship, marriage, people are exposed to incompetence and cruelty. Marriage, remarriage, being single, making babies in paradise are told to Jehovah's Witnesses like a rom-com gone bad. And it causes visceral panic in many, including people that bypass marriage to drive around handing out their literature as pioneers their whole lives. Or the couple that gave up having children because Armageddon was coming any second now, but telling happily married people that if one of them dies, they'll get to look at each other from across the room for all eternity in paradise, but they can never reunite with each other, or for that matter, anyone else if you're resurrected. Well, let's just say the ending of The Notebook now looks like child's play. And let me tell you, I was a bawling baby in that movie. And when you think about it, it's truly sick. It's a sick thing to tell people hanging on by a thread in this organization, hanging on that possibly they'll experience unbelievable perfect happiness with someone they love forever. But when you look at this, folks, it isn't hard to discern this. These guys in New York are incompetent. They're stupid. The verse in the Bible is obvious, and they've built entire watchtowers and endless question from the readers about it. But at the end of the day, history is rife with examples of cults attacking marriage and the family unit. Look at every cult. Hit them hard in the heart, at the soul level, at their relationships. All of this insanity that I've talked about today is what happens when you try to explain a couple verses in the Bible that are so obvious to understand. You're amazed that they've somehow pulled this over on people for this long. So here it is from this host to you. As for now, forget about this bizarre paradise that, by the way, is never coming. Take time today to go hug that special person. Go hold that someone special. Go hold someone's hand. Go make a baby. Word has it, it's a lot of fun. Go out on that date. Take a risk. Companionship is one of life's greatest gifts. Committed relationships are unbelievable treasures. Not always easy, but unbelievable treasures to be held in the highest, highest regard. And whatever you do and whatever you believe, after listening to what they say about marriage, the future, singlehood, and whatnot, don't let these stupid bastards take this away from you. Don't let them. Don't let them. And on that note, I want to say to everyone, thanks for listening. Until next week, I hope you're in some mushy, gushy love affair. If not, go find one. Wherever you may be well.